everyone, and welcome back to another AAC video. For those of you coming across the Animal Artist Collective for the first time, we are a group of artists here on YouTube founded by Jennifer, Charlie, and myself. We create artwork every other month in order to raise awareness and donation funds for various conservation efforts around the globe, and we hope that you enjoy these videos. Before we get started on today's video, I just wanted to give you a quick thank you for the reception of the last AAC video on the Amazon fires. You guys were amazingly supportive in the comments and of your support. We had a lot of people independently donating to the funds that I had requested, and the original actually did sell almost immediately, and I'm just so grateful that we could all come together to support that fund. So thank you so much. In 2019, our theme has been animal groups, and this month we are finally going to be focusing on one of my absolute favorite groups of animals, reptiles. Reptiles are a group of vertebrate animals that originated around 320 million years ago. Formerly, when I worked at the zoo, I would oversimplify things and tell young children that reptiles are animals that have scales rather than fur or feathers. They are ectothermic, or what most people would call cold-blooded, and they usually, but not always, lay eggs. I'm always careful to use the word ectothermic rather than cold-blooded, as reptiles don't actually have physically cold blood all the time. What it does mean is that they can't create their own heat like mammals and birds do. Instead, they get their heat from their surrounding environment, and that's why you can often find lizards basking in the sun, especially early in the morning, and why you wouldn't find many of these reptiles in polar regions of the planet. Their bodies require a base level of heat to function, but they are dependent on outside factors for that heat. Many people are often also surprised to learn that not all reptiles are oviparous or egg-laying. In fact, some of my most favorite reptiles, including boas and skinks, are ovoviviparous, which means that the yolk sacs are retained within the mother without a hard shell, and those mothers give birth to live young. Reptile classification has varied quite a bit throughout modern history. Once classified as one and the same along with amphibians, further scientific research has clearly proven just how different these two groups are. For instance, while it's the common myth that snakes are slimy, that is not true at all. Reptiles and their scaled skin are dry to the touch unless specifically wetted by other means, which is in opposition to amphibians, which have continuously wet or damp skin in order to promote oxygen transfer. Furthermore, amphibians go through a metamorphosis to change from one life stage to another, e.g. larva to tadpole to adult, while reptiles shed their skin in order to grow larger, but this process doesn't change their physical form. Reptiles have gone through a number of phylogenetic classifications throughout history, as late as being reshuffled in 2014. Currently, the living groups of reptiles consist of turtles and tortoises, crocodilians, snakes, lizards, legless lizards, and tuataras. And oh, how I wish I could have done a video representing each and every one of them. I could have done a video on red-tailed boas, which I used to keep as my own pets, and even had the opportunity to witness one giving birth to a litter of her babies. Being part of that community exposed me to the passionate group of people who live with and care for these misunderstood creatures, as well as it introduced me to the extremely important realm of the pet trade and how to best support obtaining reptiles from trusted captive sources rather than those who collect them from the wild, which harms those wild populations. Or perhaps I could have gone on and on about how amazing the endangered herbivorous prehensile skinks from the Solomon Islands are. They give birth to live young, but instead of a litter, they give birth to a single large baby after a 9-month gestation, which is the equivalent of a human giving birth to a 6-year-old child. Ouch. And those babies have to eat their parents' feces in the hours following birth in order to gain the microfauna that they require for survival. Or perhaps I could have talked about how crocodilians are more closely related to birds than lizards. Wait, what? That's something I just learned now. I shared the story of how a malnourished alligator came to live at the zoo that I worked at after being dumped in the San Francisco Bay Delta after someone tried to keep it as a pet, and how later on I'd go on to witness him in a training session that changed my entire outlook on all reptiles and their perceived intelligence versus the learning that they are actually capable of. And I could have also talked about the chillest little desert tortoise that I've ever met, who came when you called him and loved strawberries and being pet, but whose species is endangered and in need of a lot of awareness too. But with how heavy my last AAC video was, I wanted to focus on an animal this time around that was just plain fun for me. It's a species that I've always loved, and I decided on the crested gecko that you're watching me paint today. This crested gecko's name was Piper, and she was a pet of mine back in my reptile days. I had adopted her as an adult who had lost her tail from a reputable mom-and-pop pet shop. I affectionately called her Wigglebutt, as she would wiggle her little tailless back end back and forth before jumping off and landing somewhere else. They are perhaps the cutest little lizard I have ever gotten a chance to work with, complete with their huge eyes and faux eyelashes. They are among some of the largest gecko species in the world, ranging from 6 to 10 inches long, including their tail, and they have a row of spines on either side of their head, starting behind their eyes, giving them their crested name. These spines narrow into a dorsal stripe of sorts that runs down their back. They actually lack eyelids, so they have to lick them clean with their relatively long tongues, and their toes and the tip of their tail are covered in setae or hair-like structures, which allows them to climb vertical surfaces. Their tails are semi-prehensile, so while they can't fully hang from them, they do aid them in climbing if they do in fact have a tail, but their tails can be dropped as well as a distraction for a predator if there's something that is threatening it. When doing so, the tail detaches from the body via a set of muscles and twitches around on the ground or wherever it lands to draw the attention of the predator while the gecko escapes. Their tails will not grow back, but unlike the more common leopard gecko pets, which use their tail for fat storage and is pretty important for their overall health, crested geckos don't actually need their tails to survive. Cresties, as we call them in the pet world, come in many natural color variations and base patterns. Captive breeders often pair specific individuals to enhance these naturally occurring traits or morphs, much like we have done for hundreds of years with dogs, cats, and horses. Piper was a yellow patternless gecko with Dalmatian spots, which are considered an independent trait that can be found on any color or base pattern. While I mostly want to focus on how adorable and awesome these geckos are, crested geckos are not without their own plights. Even though they are common pets and breed readily in captivity, their status in the wild is precarious at best. They are only found on 2 of the islands in New Caledonia. Once thought to be extinct, they were rediscovered in the 1990s. CITES is assessing their protection status at the moment, but New Caledonia no longer allows these reptiles to be exported for the pet trade. The biggest threat that they actually currently face in the wild are an introduced species called little fire ants. These ants prey on the geckos themselves in large numbers and otherwise compete with them for food. So how can we help? Remember that when you're traveling from country to country or even state to state, the regulations on produce, wood, etc. exist for specific reasons, and that reason is usually to prevent the spread of an invasive species, parasite, or other biological factors. When searching for a new pet, crested gecko or otherwise, look for animals at rescues first. Yes, even reptiles have rescues, and you can probably find a local one to you. And if not, you can acquire one from a reputable breeder that has good practices and does not take animals out of the wild. This original painting is available for sale with 50% of the proceeds going to the IUCN Red List, which funds assessment and reassessment of threatened and endangered species and is a critical indicator for health of our world's biodiversity. For more information, you can find links in the description below. Typically, prints of our AAC pieces are made available either after the original sells or in 2 weeks, whichever comes sooner. However, given the lovely fall colors, I decided that I wanted to make the reproduction of this piece a Patreon exclusive, and it will be the November Patreon exclusive postcard. There are still a couple of spots left, so if you are interested in this piece, head on over to Patreon before the end of the month and sign up for a tier at $15 or higher to receive this as well as many other Patreon perks. As we bring 2019 to a close and venture into 2020, we will be having a new theme for the AAC videos next year. Our new theme will be continents. So the first year we did was habitats, then we did animal groups, and now continents. So you can help us out by voting on the next theme that will come up in January by using the link in the description below to our Facebook poll. This poll will be active for the next week or so, I believe, and that'll let us prepare for our upcoming adventures. As for general and liquid color updates, there will be an upcoming holiday sale, so stay tuned for that if you've been wanting a zipper pouch or new stickers or prints. My patrons' mailing list from my website and Instagram are usually the first to be notified, so links to all those can also be found down below. There will be another exciting announcement coming soon here on the channel, as well as our 3rd annual gift guide from Eve, Sade, Caria, and myself on Black Friday. Thank you all for your love and support of the AAC as we wrap up our second full year of creating this content to share with our communities. And as always, many thanks to my patrons for helping keep me and Cricket personally afloat. Until next time, happy painting.